Hello guys, I'm back. This is the wrap-up video for discussion 1B, the one on the quotes on Robert Park, the section of the Bible from Genesis on the Tower of Babel, and the short quote from Lewis Mumford, the urbanist from the 1920s. Once again, you've done a beautiful job with with all the comments, and I love the things that you added to it. The quote from Thor was a really beautiful way of describing what these authors are talking about. There was somebody that talked about "we are the city," about how important the people who live in the city sort of make the city itself. Those were awesome ideas, so I'm really excited about all of those things. I wanted to develop a few things, and I wanted to add a few things for you to think about with the three quotes, and I'll just go in order. About Babel. There's a moment in the story where they're about to build a city, and they say, let's build the city ourselves, and I'm quoting, so that we may make a name for ourselves. And I want you to think about that a little more, and perhaps a little deeper, because part of what's happening in Genesis is that man is using the city in order to create an image of themselves. That may make a name for ourselves. We will be gone, but the city will remain. And the image of the city, with the towers and the buildings and the cities and the walls, remember we're in ancient Mesopotamia, that image will be the image of those people, in the case of the story, of those men who build the city itself. So notice how from the very beginning of Western civilization, we have this notion of there's a relationship between the urban space and humans and persons. So put that in your minds, put it in the back burner. It might be useful in the future. Robert Park. I loved how you analyzed him in terms of how the making of the city sort of affects and influences humanity. And that's the one thing that I want to stress. The very end of the quote, it says, in making the city, man, people, he's being sexist, people have remade himself. Let me just read this again. In making the city, man has remade himself. And he's using that sort of sexist vocabulary. I didn't want to rewrite his lines. And so it's not so much about the potential of changing the city. It's more about the effect that by our deciding that cities are the places to be, the places to live, the places to grow, that we have changed who humans are. We have made the city because we wanted to make it after our heart's desire, the things that we wanted to be in. But now in the process of making this new space that didn't exist before, we have changed. We're someone else. We're going to call them in about a week urbanites. And this is something that it's going to be really useful in this class, because that relationship, as I said with the Tower of Babel, that relationship of how man connects to, how persons connect to the urban space is sort of essential to understand. It's not only buildings, it's not only people, it's a relationship that exists between the two of them. Which leads me to the last one, Lewis Mumford, who you very accurately explained this notion of the city is a complex organ. I love how you sort of connected the human body with the city. There's economic things, there are governmental organizations, there's communities, there are neighborhoods, there's transportation, there's all of these things going on. And that's a really important way of thinking about the city. But he talks also about the city as theater. And I want you to, once again, put that in the back burner, because part of what he's talking about here is about the performance quality of urban spaces. That everybody's in some sort of a show. I don't know if you've noticed in Chicago, people are dressing up to walk. And they're I love wearing kilts, for example. And it's really interesting how when I'm in the suburbs and I'm wearing my kilt, everybody's looking the other way. When I'm wearing my kilt in the city, everybody's saying, "Oh, cool," or "Where did you get it?" or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's this notion that everybody's performing, that there's a performance, there's a theater about walking the sidewalk, about crossing the street, about being in a park, about attending events in the city. So that sort of performance quality of the city is another thing that I want you to keep in mind. It's really quite important. Like I did with the first discussion, I've highlighted things in bold that are that are useful for your papers in the future. And I have made lots of comments, so it might be useful. It will be useful. It should be useful for you to come and sort of see what I have said, what others have said about what you posted, because that could be really useful for the future and for the paper. So keep that in mind. All right. I think that's it. Let's see. Yes, I think that's it. Beautiful.